At first glance, Louisville feels ordinary. Quiet streets, familiar buildings, nothing out of place, but certain locations here don't behave like places should. They react, they remember, and if enough people across decades describe the same impossible details, ignoring them becomes harder than believing. Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The corridor is empty, yet the air feels crowded. A single light hums above cracked tile, steady but weak, as if it's working harder than it should. Somewhere deeper inside the building, a door clicks shut on its own. No footsteps follow, just a pause long enough to make you aware of your own breathing. Places like this were never meant to be quiet. Back then, this structure stood at the edge of Louisville, isolated by design. It opened in 1910, built to hold those society didn't know how to save. Tuberculosis patients arrived here daily, many already aware they wouldn't leave. Treatments were experimental, hope was inconsistent, and death was frequent enough to become routine. Nurses learned not to memorize faces. Orderlies stopped asking names. Rooms changed occupants faster than records could keep up. For years, the building functioned as intended. People came, people were treated, people died. Nothing about that was unusual for the time. The first moment that didn't fit came quietly. A night worker reported hearing a sound that didn't belong to machinery or wind, something rhythmic, deliberate, moving against the expected flow of the building. When checked, nothing was found out of place. No alarms, no intruders. The report was logged and forgotten, but similar notes began appearing. Different staff, different shifts, same outcome. Sounds without sources, doors found open that had been locked. A feeling described not as fear, but as being observed by something patient. As years passed, patterns formed. Visitors described sudden cold patches that didn't match the layout of the rooms. Others felt lightheaded in specific areas, only to recover the moment they stepped outside. Some claimed to see movement at the far end of hallways, not figures, just the sense that something had moved away. What's striking isn't the experiences themselves, it's how people reacted to them. Staff transfers increased, night shifts became harder to fill. Some workers refused to return to certain floors, unable to explain why without sounding unreasonable even to themselves. One incident forced a change. During routine operations, access to parts of the building was restricted after an unexplained event left equipment damaged and staff shaken. No dramatic announcement followed, just quiet adjustments, areas closed, paths altered, questions unanswered. There are explanations, of course. Residual trauma embedded in the environment, the psychological weight of knowing what happened here. Old buildings settling, sounds traveling where they shouldn't, all reasonable, all incomplete. Today, the structure still stands. Visitors walk its halls in daylight, careful not to linger too long. Guides avoid certain details. Locals avoid certain topics. And when the building empties again, it returns to the state it seems to prefer. Not abandoned, just waiting. Louisville Palace Theater? The auditorium is dark, but not empty. A single bulb glows above the stage, casting long shadows across rows of seats that have learned how to wait. Velvet curtains hang still, yet there's a faint sound, like fabric brushing against fabric, though nothing is moving. Somewhere above the ceiling, a slow, deliberate step crosses a space no one is supposed to be in. This building was designed to impress. When it opened in the late 1920s, it represented excess, elegance, and escape. Moviegoers dressed their best, orchestras filled the air, and performers stood beneath lights that made them feel untouchable. Ushers memorized routines. Projectionists worked alone, high above the crowd, surrounded by heat and machinery. For decades, everything followed a rhythm. Shows ended, crowds left, doors locked. Silence returned until the next night. Then, small interruptions began slipping into that silence. It started with technicians reporting lights turning on after shutdown. Nothing dramatic, just enough to be noticed. A sound booth door found unlocked. Equipment powered when no one was scheduled. Each time, someone shrugged it off. Old wiring, long days, human error. One evening, a worker felt someone brush past them in a narrow corridor behind the stage. Instinctively, they stepped aside and apologized, then realized no one was there. No footsteps followed, no doors opened, just the sense that something had passed through with purpose. Reports like that didn't come all at once. They spread over years, different employees, different roles, same quiet confusion. Some mentioned hearing laughter during empty rehearsals. Others noticed the feeling of being watched only when standing in one specific spot near the stage wing. What matters isn't what was seen, it's what people did afterward. Certain staff avoided working alone. Night shifts were quietly traded. A few long-time employees refused to enter upper levels after dark, unable to explain why without sounding foolish. One projectionist requested a transfer after repeatedly hearing someone speak behind him while the booth was locked from the inside. There was one moment management couldn't ignore. During a routine night operation, an unexpected incident disrupted a live setup, forcing parts of the building to be checked and rechecked. Nothing obvious was damaged, nothing officially wrong was found. But access procedures changed afterward. Some areas became off-limits without explanation. Rational explanations exist. Old theaters make noise. Temperature shifts affect materials. The human brain fills gaps when left alone too long. All reasonable ideas. None of them explain why the same presence is described in the same places by people who never spoke to each other. Today, the venue still hosts performances. Audiences applaud. Lights shine. Most never notice what lingers once the seat's empty. Locals know which corners feel heavier, which hallways seem longer at night. Seelbach Hotel, the Seelbach Hilton. The lobby settles into stillness long after midnight. Chandeliers remain lit, polished enough to reflect movement that isn't there. A bell at the front desk sways slightly, though no one has touched it. An elevator dings on an upper floor, announcing an arrival that never reaches the hallway. This place was built to host elegance, not silence. When it opened in the early 20th century, it quickly became a gathering point for politicians, performers, and travelers passing through Louisville. Marble floors carried confident footsteps. Guests checked in wearing suits and evening dresses, expecting comfort, discretion, and sleep untouched by the outside world. Staff learned routines meant to make the building feel alive at all hours. For decades, it worked exactly as intended. Then something subtle began interrupting that rhythm. A night clerk noticed a woman standing near the grand staircase, dressed in blue, watching the lobby without speaking. Thinking she was a guest in need of help, he looked down to retrieve paperwork. When he looked back up, the space was empty. No sound of footsteps, no doors opening, just the faint impression that someone had been there moments earlier. The report didn't travel far. It didn't need to. Over time, similar encounters surfaced. Different employees, different shifts, the same description repeated without coordination. A figure near the stairs, a sense of quiet observation, an unease that faded the moment daylight returned. Some guests mentioned hearing music drifting from closed ballrooms. Others woke to find personal items moved, never missing, just repositioned. What stands out is how people responded. Certain staff members avoided the staircase entirely at night. Others refused to work alone in the lobby, claiming the space felt heavier after certain hours. A few employees requested reassignment without explanation, unwilling to articulate something that couldn't be proven. There was one moment that forced attention. During routine overnight operations, a disturbance caused a brief shutdown in part of the building. No fire, no damage, just enough confusion to prompt internal review. Procedures quietly changed afterward. Some areas received limited access. No public statement followed. There are explanations that make sense. Historic hotels carry sound in strange ways. Lighting can distort perception. Memory fills gaps when the mind expects patterns. All reasonable ideas. None of them explain why people with no knowledge of earlier reports describe the same woman in the same place, with the same detached calm. Today, the hotel continues welcoming guests. Most never notice anything unusual. A few pause near the staircase longer than expected. Locals know which questions not to ask staff directly. Old Louisville, Victorian Historic District. The street is quiet, almost too quiet. Gas lamps flicker along brick sidewalks, throwing shadows that twist with the night breeze. A solitary door creaks open, then closes of its own accord. Somewhere above, a window rattles, though no one is home. The calm is deceptive, hinting at histories that refuse to rest. These streets were laid nearly 2 centuries ago, a testament to craftsmanship and the aspirations of Louisville's early elite. Brick row houses and ornate mansions rose with care, balconies and turrets crowning them like crowns. Families moved in, children grew, Servants came and went. Life unfolded along these narrow lanes with the rhythm of domestic routines and neighborhood whispers. Then, subtle anomalies began appearing. Residents reported lights flickering in rooms no one occupied, doors that remained locked yet gave the impression of movement inside, and fleeting sounds, footsteps, soft laughter, whispered conversations that no one could place. It began with one household noticing a chair shifted when no one was present. They assumed fatigue, distraction, or a draft. Soon after, a neighbor mentioned seeing a silhouette cross a hall where the room was empty. Individually, each incident could be rationalized. Together, a pattern emerged. Different households reported their own experiences. Music faintly drifted from closed parlors, curtains fluttered without wind, and a sensation of being watched became common among those walking alone at night. Each account shared a disquieting clarity, leaving residents unsettled yet unable to articulate precisely why. Reactions were varied. Some avoided certain staircases, others refused to enter the homes after sunset. Families debated moving, while caretakers adjusted routines to avoid night work. One long-term resident recounted waking to someone at the foot of their bed, only to find it empty. Moments later, the air unnervingly still. An incident eventually prompted local authorities and property managers to intervene. Doors were secured differently, access limited in certain homes, and long-term oversight increased. No one provided public explanations. The adjustments were quiet, methodical. There are explanations. Old houses creak, wind passes through uneven masonry, and human imagination fills voids. Yet these do not fully account for the repeated reports of movement, presence, and sound in houses untouched for decades. Today, the district remains a living snapshot of Victorian ambition. Tourists walk the streets during the day, captivated by architecture and history, largely unaware of the weight that lingers in its shadows. Locals know which corners to pass quickly, which houses to glance at and move on. And when the city settles at night, the row houses keep their silent watch, balconies and windows holding histories that refuse to sleep, waiting for the next quiet observer to notice their stories. Cave Hill Cemetery. Fog rolls over uneven ground, muffling the crunch of leaves underfoot. Stone markers rise from the earth like silent sentinels, some leaning with age, others sharp and fresh. A bench sits empty beneath an oak, its shadow stretching unnaturally, though the moon is high and unobstructed. Somewhere, a gate swings just slightly, though no wind stirs the air. It's here, in the heart of Louisville, that a resting place was designed not just for the departed, but for reflection. Established in the 1840s, it quickly became a sprawling cemetery, its paths winding past ornate mausoleums and monuments crafted to withstand both time and memory. Families chose plots here, often commissioning elaborate statues, inscriptions, and crypts to honor lives lived. Groundskeepers walked these lanes daily, maintaining order and calm where grief and remembrance intertwined. At first, the cemetery held its quiet as expected. Visitors came and went, the living observing rituals and ceremonies, and departed, leaving the site still. But over time, subtle anomalies began emerging. The first reports were minor. A caretaker noticed a shadow where sunlight should have reached, a figure standing motionless among stones that hadn't seen anyone in hours. At night, distant footsteps echoed along lanes too narrow for anyone to pass unnoticed. Each event alone seemed explainable, but a pattern slowly surfaced. Multiple witnesses, decades apart, spoke of similar experiences. Glimpses of movement at the edge of vision, faint whispers along pathways, fleeting impressions of figures in period attire. Some felt sudden chills while standing by particular mausoleums, others heard distant laughter or cries with no one nearby. Residents and employees began to quietly alter their routines, avoiding certain sections during dusk or early evening. One incident drew attention. During routine maintenance, a caretaker discovered gates unlocked and statues shifted without apparent cause. No signs of intrusion, no tools misplaced, just the evidence that something had passed through deliberately. Management responded by adjusting access, securing the most affected areas, and quietly monitoring the grounds. Rational explanations exist: uneven terrain, echoes, the imagination filling voids, night sounds traveling oddly across stone. Yet they fail to account for the repetition, consistency, and timing reported by those who experienced it firsthand. Today, the cemetery continues as both a historical landmark and a resting place. Tourists stroll its paths in daylight, guided by maps and history, unaware of the subtle unease that lingers when shadows lengthen. Locals know which mausoleums feel heavier, which paths invite quick passage. And when the city sleeps, the markers and monuments remain, patient and still, guarding their stories, waiting for those quiet moments when the living pass unnoticed through a place that remembers. Pope Lick Monster, Pope Lick Trestle. A low fog creeps along the riverbank, swallowing the sound of distant cars. Rails stretch across the chasm like a finger pointing into shadow. The wind carries something unplaceable, a faint scrape, a metallic whisper that vanishes before you can follow it. A single plank shifts underfoot, though no one has walked this way for hours. It's here, suspended above the river, that the trestle was first built in the early 20th century. Steel and wood stretched across a deep cut, meant to carry trains safely, to connect communities and commerce. Workers walked its beams daily, aware of the drop below, aware that a single misstep could be the last. Locals soon discovered the dangers, and stories began circulating. Tragic accidents, lost lives, warnings to keep distance. The first unusual sighting came quietly. A night traveler noticed something standing along the rails, just at the edge of the fog. At first, it appeared like a person, but posture and movement didn't match any human rhythm. It didn't approach. It simply waited. Soon, more accounts emerged. Different hikers, joggers, and trespassers spoke of fleeting glimpses, a figure darting behind girders, laughter echoing where only wind should be, a shadow that fell just slightly wrong. Others described sudden chills while standing on the bridge, or the unshakable impression of being watched, even when alone. Reactions were immediate. Visitors left quickly, some never returned. Local authorities posted signs, but the stories persisted. Teenagers dared each other to cross at night. Some came back pale and silent, unable to explain what they'd seen. A few residents claimed to hear pleading or laughter drifting from the rails on quiet evenings. One event forced stronger measures. A hiker slipped and nearly fell. Investigators noted unusual scratches along nearby beams, and debris shifted in ways no one could account for. Management reinforced parts of the trestle and increased monitoring, though the warning signs were largely ignored by those drawn to the site. Explanations exist: optical illusions, adrenaline, fear magnifying ordinary movement. But none fully account for the repeated, independent observations that share consistent details across decades. Today, the trestle remains a mix of danger and fascination. Daytime visitors tread carefully, photographers snap images from safe distances, and locals advise caution while hinting at what lingers after dark. And when the fog thickens and the river is still, the trestle keeps its silent watch, holding memories of missteps, warnings, and presence that no one can fully explain. Patient, waiting, unmoving, yet impossible to ignore. Camp Taylor. A lone streetlight hums faintly over a row of abandoned barracks. The air smells of damp earth and aged timber. Footsteps echo where no one walks, and a distant gate clangs once, then falls silent. Somewhere, the wind carries the faint rhythm of marching, yet no drum sounds accompany it. During the First World War, this area transformed almost overnight. Soldiers arrived in flurries of uniforms and equipment, the ground alive with activity, drills, and the chatter of men far from home. Barracks, mess halls, and training fields sprawled across acres once quiet, now humming with anticipation and discipline. Families and officers came and went, some leaving behind letters and stories, others never returning. Then things shifted. One night, a caretaker reported lights moving across the empty grounds, figures crossing paths with no one present. A single sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping, reverberated across a dormitory floor, vanishing before it could be traced. Soon, multiple experiences emerged. Locals strolling nearby at dusk sensed a presence. The echo of voices faintly carried on the wind. Doors, firmly closed, appeared ajar the next morning. A visitor described feeling hands brush past their shoulder, yet no one else walked the path. Each incident was subtle, but together they wove an unsettling pattern. Reactions were human, instinctual. Some soldiers' descendants refused to step near the site after dark. Joggers avoided certain trails, while long-term residents spoke of shivers, sudden fatigue, or unease when passing the main gate. Even the bravest felt the weight of something unseen, observing from the shadows of the old barracks. One documented moment stands out. During a routine inspection, a caretaker found equipment displaced, bunks disturbed, and lights flickering without cause. Management responded by securing the area, limiting access, and increasing oversight, though much of the barracks remains abandoned, left to time and the quiet hum of memory. Logical explanations exist: wind-moving doors, settling timber, imagination filling gaps. Yet these do not explain why the experiences repeat across decades, reported by people with no connection to each other at the same spots, often under identical conditions. Today, the grounds lie mostly silent, a mix of history and absence. Daytime visitors glimpse old foundations and rusting structures, curious but careful. Those who linger feel a pull, a subtle unease, the whisper of lives long departed lingering in corners of the empty fields. And when night falls, the barracks keep their watch, quiet and expectant, as if waiting for someone to hear the rhythm of marching long gone, yet impossibly close. Old Colgate Factory, Louisville. The hum of a broken machine lingers long after the last worker left. Dust swirls in a thin beam of moonlight, cutting through cracked windows. Somewhere behind rusting tanks, a faint clatter echoes, as if the floor remembers every footstep ever taken. Silence settles quickly, but it carries a tension, an uninvited presence in the empty corridors. At the turn of the 20th century, this complex sprang to life. Rows of factories buzzed with activity, the scent of chemicals thick in the air, workers moving in a precise rhythm dictated by conveyor belts and production lines. Families depended on these jobs, and each shift brought a mix of exhaustion and pride, the machinery both friend and taskmaster. Then, things began to feel off. A night guard once noted that a machine, unplugged for the night, hummed briefly, its vibrations traveling through the cold cement floor. He stepped back, but the hum died before anyone else arrived. Questions lingered, and explanations felt insufficient. Soon, reports multiplied. Employees on late shifts sensed fleeting shadows crossing rooms no one entered. Metal doors swung slightly, yet no draft was felt. Footsteps echoed through hallways already cleared, and the distinct smell of mint, used in toothpaste, rose in isolated pockets of the building. Each occurrence subtle, yet collectively unsettling. The human reaction was instinctive. Workers avoided certain hallways, feeling unease descend without reason. Maintenance crews reported headaches, sudden chills, and the urge to leave early. Even those confident in their skepticism hesitated when alone, pausing mid-step as if something unseen observed them from the corners. One documented incident stands out. During a routine inspection, security cameras caught movement where no person could have been, shadows crossing machinery bays in patterns inconsistent with normal operation. Management responded by restricting night access and installing additional locks, but the building's vast, empty expanse retains an atmosphere impossible to erase. Logical explanations exist: residual noises from settling infrastructure, imagination filling gaps, or ventilation causing faint vibrations. Yet these do not account for the repeated occurrences in identical spots over decades, reported by different people at different times. Today, the factory sits largely abandoned, a relic of Louisville's industrial past. Daytime visitors glimpse faded signage, peeling paint, and rusted equipment, feeling a subtle tension despite the calm, sunlit corridors. The building's memory lingers, and after dark, the quiet hum seems less mechanical, as if the walls themselves whisper stories of a past that refuses to rest. And as night falls, the floors wait in quiet patience, every echo a question, every shadow a reminder that work done long ago still watches. Sleepy Hollow? The wind whispers through bare branches, brushing the gravel path with a soft rustle. A swing creaks in the distance, moving though no one is near. The night feels thick, heavy with a stillness that presses against the ears, making each distant hoot and snap of twig louder than it should be. Somewhere just beyond a shadowed curve, the feeling of being watched settles in, subtle but unshakable. Back then, this stretch of land was known for gatherings of families and travelers, its serene expanse dotted with cottages and open fields. Over the decades, the woods surrounding the area became a magnet for stories. Tales of disappearances, strange sightings, and warnings whispered among locals. During that period, the Sleepy Hollow earned a reputation that stretched quietly into neighboring towns. The first anomaly came to light when a jogger noticed the path behind her seemed to stretch differently than she remembered. Each time she looked back, the trail curved oddly, yet the familiar landmarks remained in place. She paused, heart steady but curiosity sharp. What had changed? Soon, multiple accounts appeared. A night hiker heard soft laughter echoing among trees that had no clear origin. Another visitor glimpsed a figure moving between shadows, vanishing when approached. Dogs refused to cross certain clearings, while vehicles stalled inexplicably at points along the road. Each occurrence alone seemed explainable. Together, they painted a pattern hard to ignore. Humans responded instinctively. Locals avoided wandering alone after dusk. Campers packed early, citing a sense of unease too specific to dismiss. Children woke from nightmares recounting whispers in the trees, and seasoned hikers reported inexplicable chills that lingered long after leaving. A documented incident from the early 2000s involved a pair of teenagers exploring the woods. One climbed a hill to get a better view and fell, seemingly pushed, though no one was nearby. Authorities increased patrols, erected warning signs, and temporarily closed the area to late-night visitors, though the woods themselves seemed unaffected by these measures. Rational explanations exist: uneven terrain causing missteps, echoing sounds, or optical illusions formed by moonlight through branches. Yet, these do not account for repeated sightings reported by independent individuals, always in roughly the same locations. Today, Sleepy Hollow remains a draw for thrill seekers and curious locals. The path is maintained, though the more secluded clearings see little foot traffic. Guards note those who linger too long, often moving away abruptly, sensing an unseen pressure that draws attention to the silence itself. And in the quiet, the shadows seem to breathe with a patience that outlasts human presence, leaving the impression that the Hollow is less a place than a lingering question. Spring Street Bar and Grill, Louisville. The hum of the refrigerator mixes with the low scrape of a chair dragged across the floor. Glasses clink in a corner where no one seems to be seated, and a draft sneaks under the back door, cold enough to raise goosebumps. Somewhere in the dim light, a shadow moves just outside the line of sight, too deliberate to be imagined. During that period, this establishment stood as a quiet neighborhood gathering spot, its walls witnessing birthdays, late-night conversations, and the occasional argument. Back then, bartenders noticed the same bar stool always seemed to shift slightly between closing and opening. The building, a decades-old structure in Louisville, held more than the smell of polish and spilled beer. It held layers of stories etched into its floorboards and ceiling beams. One evening, a server noticed a glass of water vibrating on the counter, though no music played and no one was near. She stepped closer, thinking it was a passing tremor in the floor, only to find it continued, unbroken. What unseen rhythm caused it to move with such precision? Soon, patterns began to appear. Patrons reported faint footsteps above the dining area when the upstairs was empty. A cook felt a cold presence brushing past her back in the kitchen, while another noticed chairs aligning themselves differently after the last patrons left. The small disturbances seemed isolated at first, but collectively they hinted at something persistent. People adapted quietly. Waitstaff avoided certain corners after dark. Regulars joked nervously, but some stopped coming for late dinners entirely. Employees spoke in hushed tones about sudden shivers or the inexplicable feeling of being watched, sometimes leaving early without explanation. A documented instance in the 1990s involved a maintenance worker who found a locked storage room open, tools scattered on the floor, though the previous evening he had secured everything. Management responded by changing locks and installing additional lighting, yet the odd movement continued in areas previously undisturbed. Practical explanations exist: uneven floors, drafts, the building settling over decades. Yet these fail to account for reports from different shifts and unrelated visitors, noting disturbances in consistent locations at precise moments. Today, the bar and grill welcomes crowds, laughter, and clinking glasses, though certain tables remain empty long past closing. Staff report the occasional cold patch or the soft scrape of unseen movement, enough to make them glance over their shoulders while wiping counters. And the rooms that hum when empty, the faint sounds when the music is off, leave a lingering thought. Some places remember more than the people who walk through them. Tucker Station, swimming area. The water laps softly against the shore, yet no one is swimming. A lone towel drifts across the sand, stirring slightly as if nudged by something unseen. The air smells of wet earth and sun-warmed wood, but an odd chill brushes across the back of the neck, lingering longer than the breeze. Back then, this stretch of riverbank served as a favored gathering place for families, teens, and fishermen, its wooden platforms holding picnics, laughter, and the occasional scraped knee. During that period, visitors occasionally mentioned the odd feeling of being watched, though the bank seemed empty and quiet. The Tucker Station swimming area carried the scent of nostalgia, yet beneath its calm surface, the river concealed layers of forgotten stories. One late afternoon, a teen leaned over the railing to retrieve a floating bottle, only to find the water ripple sharply in a straight line toward the bank, though no one was near. He stepped back, puzzled, the sensation of being slightly off balance lingering. What unseen hand had shifted the current in that exact moment? It became more than one fleeting incident. A family saw their picnic blanket slide gently down a slight slope, while a kayaker noticed paddles turning on their own for brief seconds. Another reported a soft voice carrying from the trees, though no one else was around to speak. Each experience alone seemed minor, but together they formed a pattern no one could fully explain. People adjusted quietly. Teens stopped lingering near certain piers. Parents kept younger children closer, especially during dusk. Regular visitors talked in whispers about inexplicable shivers or the sudden weight of unease pressing on them without cause. A documented moment occurred when a local lifeguard discovered the old rope swing, pulled down and tangled, though it had been securely tied the evening before. The authorities repaired it, but restricted access to the swing indefinitely, citing safety concerns, though the incident left more questions than answers. Explanations exist, currents behaving oddly, branches brushing against ropes, the natural echo of the river valley. Yet, these fail to account for consistent reports from separate visitors, noticing disturbances at the same piers and platforms in ways the environment alone cannot explain. Today, families return for sun and water, laughter and splash. Yet, certain spots remain avoided, where shadows fall heavier in late afternoon, and the water moves just slightly differently, enough to make a pause in conversation feel instinctively necessary. And the gentle, inexplicable ripple of the river leaves one thought lingering. Some places carry memory in ways the eye cannot measure, shaping the way visitors step, sit, and move without fully realizing it. Phoenix Hill Tavern. The neon sign flickers softly, humming in rhythm with the quiet hum of the street outside. Empty stools line the bar, their leather cracked from years of use, and the faint scent of stale beer mixes with the crisp night air. Somewhere behind the closed kitchen door, something shifts, though nothing should be moving at this hour. Back then, this tavern had already carved itself into the neighborhood, a place for laughter, heated conversations, and occasional brawls. During that period, bartenders noticed patrons lingering long after closing, some claiming the taps seemed to run on their own, or chairs were subtly rearranged by unseen hands. Phoenix Hill Tavern carried the hum of countless stories, a pulse felt more than heard. One evening, a young server reached for a tray and felt a gentle tug on their apron. No one was nearby, no draft or fan stirred the air. The simple sensation, almost polite, left the server staring at the floor, unsure why instinct whispered caution. Who or what had brushed past in silence? It didn't stop there. A patron mentioned the jukebox switching songs mid-play, though no coin had dropped. Another swore their drink had shifted across the table while they stepped outside for a moment. A bartender found a folded napkin in a precise triangle on a stool that had been empty for hours. Each minor event alone seemed odd. Together, they hinted at a subtle pattern lurking beneath routine. Employees began adjusting quietly. Closing time became a moment to linger near the door, watchful, alert. Some refused the late shifts altogether. Conversations drifted to hushed tones about chairs that moved, glasses that tipped slightly, and a persistent awareness of eyes where no one could be. One recorded moment involved the bar's signature stained glass window. During a routine cleaning, the entire panel slipped from its mounting, though properly secured the night before, and shattered upon impact. Management decided to board up the window, restricting access indefinitely, even as patrons whispered about its uncanny timing. Rational explanations exist: drafts through the old brick, vibrations from the nearby streets, human error in placement or cleaning. Yet, none fully account for reports aligning with the same stools, the same corners, and the same hours of the night. Today, locals still pass through for drinks, music, and laughter. Yet certain stools remain empty, corners lightly avoided, and a glance up at the dim neon can stir a fleeting unease, subtle, unspoken, persistent. And sometimes, in the quiet hum of an otherwise ordinary night, one wonders how the memory of a place can press against your senses, shaping behavior, anticipation, and the pause before you even speak.